All right, we are live. This time with no baby. So, if you stick through it this long, thanks. I guess analytics tell me that you don't without the baby. All right, Georgia plays Georgia Tech this week, Saturday. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Uh, First, let's get into the Georgia Tennessee game, and then we'll do Georgia Tech preview. Uh, um, what were your takeaways from Georgia Tennessee?
Uh, Carson Beck is really good. The best pro prospect at quarterback Georgia's had since Matthew Stafford. Some of those throws, even though I don't agree with Gary Danielson on much, if anything, it was clear with anybody that's got two eyes. We said it last week. He's in command of this offense. Not only that, he's got an NFL arm. I mean, he can gun it in there. He was fitting it in some pocket. I mean, in some windows that if you didn't have a gun, you wouldn't have gotten. He was throwing fastballs at the very beginning of the game, but then he started throwing the ball with some touch. That 3rd and 12 that he hit on the outside, he couldn't have been placed anywhere else, right?
Right.
Defense, well, let me back up. Bobo, for all the people, including myself, I always liked Bobo, but I don't understand early on in the year when we would throw the ball um, horizontally from sideline to sideline, but obviously they were doing something. I don't know what they were doing, but now, I mean, it seems like he feels comfortable in knowing what he can call, and he was definitely in his bag on Saturday against Tennessee. That was the other thing. You start thinking about Georgia versus other teams, and there's some other good teams, but
Yeah.
with the coaching staff that we have, the Bobos, the Muschamps, the Kirbys that played there, the BMACs, they really care. They really, really care. And I know these games are important to them. They're obviously good coaches. And I thought especially the offensive staff, but also defensive staff, I thought they did a great job. Defense continues. That was just Kirby said it. I'm not saying anything that is earth shattering here. It's pretty well. It was a bad fit on that first play.
Yeah.
But I guess that made all the 100,000 Tennessee fans happy for about 12 or 14 seconds. And then Georgia ripped their souls out of them. Still stick by my my opinion that Tennessee is the most delusional fan base, the most ignorant fan base. And evidently, from everybody that's kind of not everybody, but a lot of people who've spoken to it, the things the student sections and the fans were saying and doing, and even the players were doing to Brock Bowers. I mean, I'm all for playing tough nosed football, but these are 18 to 23-year-old kids that were probably recruited by Tennessee, quite honestly,
Yeah.
and just didn't choose to go there. That kind of stuff is kind of uncalled for. But defensively, I mean, Joe Milton is exactly what we said he was, which is inaccurate. It doesn't matter if you can throw the ball 120 yards. If you can't hit what you're throwing at, it's pretty much insignificant. And it takes a really consistent dual threat, in my opinion, dual threat quarterback to beat Georgia. And that guy clearly is not it. I'm not picking on him. He's just not that great quarterback. So, all that being said, it was a total beatdown. Obviously, Georgia's peaking at the right time. You and I've kind of talked about it off air, and you've written about it. I don't know, man. Georgia seems to me, after watching a lot of college football by the eyeball test, Georgia looks like they are a step ahead or a step above the Ohio States, the Michigans of the world, and all the guys, and especially with, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but with Florida State's quarterback going down, I just think Georgia's starting to get healthy. I know we still got Ladd, who didn't play that much, and we got some other guys that are kind of banged up and pop. But I believe Georgia's as healthy as they have been, and that's a pretty scary proposition for the rest of college football. But we have to see how it all plays out. Anything can happen, as we know. But Impressed. I was genuinely impressed with Georgia's play. I'm the one that said that I thought Georgia very, very well could drop one of the 4 last games or whatever it was before going into Florida. I'm glad I was wrong, and I'm a big enough guy to admit that I was wrong. But that was a tough slate, much tougher slate than everybody thought coming into the year. But proud to see that we were able to get through the gauntlet. And of course, we're not there, but then we're playing a scrimmage against that other school down in Atlanta. But and they are better. Tech is better than they have been, but I still believe it's a glorified scrimmage that's coming up on Saturday, which is exactly what we need. But I don't want to get too far ahead. But yeah, I mean, I love nothing better than beating Tennessee fans than Peyton Manning and Dolly Parton and all the shenanigans that were going on. Is really good to see the Hillbillies get their ass kicked. So that's what my takeaway is. Georgia's better than I thought they were.
Well, I told you that Georgia wasn't going to lose any. I'd be shocked if they dropped, if they lost a game. I said the best was going to be Ole Miss. Didn't happen. I just Georgia is the best team. I think they've been the best team this entire time. I know everyone wants to inflate Michigan, but Michigan hasn't played anybody. And I guess we'll see Saturday. I have a suspicion that Ohio State's going to win. Which I guess we can talk about that next episode whenever we talk about the playoffs and where it goes from there. But impressed by Georgia's offense. I was impressed by Georgia's defense as well. Handling that offense isn't easy, even if the quarterback's inaccurate and is sorry. Did a good job. Defensive backs played well.
They did play well.
Played really well.
Tyke Smith had a hell of a game. All of them did.
Tyke played really well. Kamari Laster played well. Bullard played well. Dalen Everett, he played well. So I called him out last time. So I don't know if he listened maybe. I don't know.
I highly doubt it.
I highly doubt that. But they all played well. Defensive line, I thought, was much improved. I mean, early on, we gave up some runs that I wouldn't like to see. Tennessee got some good carries. I don't know though. I don't know what it was. It just seemed like every time they got in 3rd and 3, instead of running the ball, they passed. I don't know. I don't know. So maybe they thought they couldn't go through the Georgia defense on 3rd and 3. I don't know.
It is surprising, and you're putting it in the hands of the quarterback that's inaccurate on a 3rd and 3rd and short, 3rd and medium.
It happened multiple times in that game. It was just very odd to me that they did that. But whatever, I'll take it if they want to be that dumb. Georgia continues. I think they're the best team. I think you touched on it. Boo Corrigan, I know Reese Davis, I know we talked about this off air, but Boo Corrigan was asked by Reese Davis on the Reveal show, what's the difference between Georgia and the rest of the field? And he goes, well, you can't be closer than 1 than you are 2. And then in the same breath, he compared Ohio State's victory over Minnesota to what Georgia did on the road against Tennessee, who's ranked in the top 25 still.
Do you know what his background is, by the way?
He's the AD of NC State. That's all I know about him. It's bullshit. I don't think that's just I don't think that's reasonable. And the problem, and I know Georgia fans, you're probably watching this and you're probably like, well, that's a loser mentality, blah, blah, blah. But there is a chance that I think Alabama's probably the second best team in the country.
I agree. I think they're the most underrated team in the top 10.
Weird to say,
yes,
especially whenever you say Alabama, but they're the number 2 team in my opinion, and Georgia could lose. I saw it happen in 2021. That's probably one of the best teams that Georgia ever had, and they had a fluke game, and they played like shit. So, Georgia deserves to be in the playoffs given what they've done in the regular season. Obviously, we still got 1 game left to go. I think they deserve to go. They shouldn't be penalized for playing 1 extra game against one of the best teams in the country. It is what it is. But if you're a Georgia fan, you don't have to pull for Florida, but it shouldn't bother you that Florida gets bowl eligibility and beats Florida State, and Louisville loses to Kentucky, and Louisville beats Florida State, which is very possible. I don't know, like the probability percentage of that happening, but it could definitely happen.
The probability that Florida beats Florida. I mean, Florida beats Florida State. That quarterback and being able to get it and I don't know what their backup quarterback situation is.
Florida's got a hurt quarterback.
I know, but don't you? I mean, I don't know if I'm right about this, but I have a feeling that Napier's offense is not as dependent on.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's the reason big rivalry game like Florida
and Florida it's at home for Florida. So yeah, it's going to be hard. I don't know. I don't think Florida's that good of a team, but here's the other thing. I don't think Florida State's that good either. I've watched enough of them to, they're a good middle of the road team, but the ACC's so bad this year. I don't know.
Well, their best win, correct me if I'm wrong, Florida State's best win is against LSU in the opening week, right?
Yeah.
It changes enough from the opening week to the end of the season, man.
Yeah.
They beat a mediocre LSU team that probably wasn't playing their best ball.
No. I mean, not even close. So I don't really understand the argument to put them in, but whatever. Also, we Georgia fans need Texas to lose, and then we need Oregon to lose and Washington to lose. Because if those things happen, Georgia's a guaranteed spot in there, and damn the rest. I think, but it doesn't matter. I think Georgia's gonna. I think right now, if you had a gun to my head, I think Georgia wins the national championship in Houston on January 8th. So I mean, we'll see. But I'm fairly confident that Georgia's going to win the national championship. So,
I would say that I'm as confident as I can be without the games being played. But there's a couple things that I don't know if you want to unpack them now or you want to wait. But do you want to wait about the playoffs and the rankings and all that convoluted crap?
Well, here's the thing. I think it's going to get more clear once this weekend happens. I think probably we should get on Monday and talk about, the after effects of all of this. Because I think it's going to be much clearer come Saturday night.
But what you just said about that boo whatever, it gives me a pretty good indication of what the committee is thinking, which is if the true goal is to pick the 4 best teams, then I don't know how anybody that watches football can make a statement and knows anything about college football can make a statement like he made comparing Minnesota to Tennessee. I mean, that to me is a little scary if I'm a Georgia fan. My opinion is if Georgia loses to Alabama and Texas wins out, that's going to be a real – I mean, you're talking about most of the time since all this, the CFP, right, all this fly in the ointment and all this is usually taken care of usually by one Saturday. Yeah. If that happens, it's going to happen much later in the year this year than it's ever happened. And I'm not so sure that it's going to – nobody is, but – I'm not so sure it's going to happen. And what's going on with rivalry weekend as well as championship weekend is everybody's talking about the 12-team playoff. You got it right now. That's what's going on. If you think about it, you got Oregon State. You got Oklahoma and Texas are probably going to play, right, for the championship.
I don't know who's going to play in the Big 12 championship, but yeah.
So you've got a lot of this, like you said, it's going to flush itself out. But if there's a one loss and Georgia gets penalized by playing in the championship game, doesn't matter what my opinion is, but it's bullshit.
It's bullshit. It's bullshit whenever you like. It's one thing if you're Ohio State, Michigan, because that's a scheduled game. You play each other every year. And the Big Ten is really just to those 2 teams. That should just be a playoff. That's fair because that's in 12 games. That's completely fair. Same with but it's not fair whenever you play an extra game that no one else has to play and not get into the playoff when you've been the best team head and shoulders the entire time. That's bullshit. And Texas is not that good. I know we all want to sit here and say how great Texas is on the national media because it's Texas, because it's a brand. Texas is not that good.
Well, let me give you another scenario, which none of these bode well for Georgia, which I'm really concerned about. What if Alabama barely loses to Georgia? You're going to have a 2-loss Alabama team that really is better than, to me, they're peaking. They're a much better team than the team that played Texas, for example.
For sure.
They're not going to get in. But
Who, Bama?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Alabama deserves it.
Me too.
Yeah,
and I'm
not wildly
hate Alabama, so don't get me. I'm not pulling.
Yeah, no.
I'm not crying over Alabama, but still, I think they're getting shafted. And I think Georgia and think about this. What if Georgia wins? Alabama plays us really, really close. Is there any scenario that both of those teams get in and we got to play friggin' Alabama again and beat them twice in 1 year?
That'd be tough.
You ain't shitting.
I mean, look, I think Alabama's unless like Jalen Milroe goes down and because none of the backup quarterbacks like Buckner and I think it's Simpson's the other kid, they're not very good. Unless Milroe gets hurt against Auburn, Alabama's probably the second best team in the country. And I think they're more deserving of a playoff spot than Oregon or Washington or Florida State.
I do as well. That would play in a tougher conference.
Yeah.
Play in a tougher conference.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, honestly, this weekend is we're about to get into the Georgia Tech game. This is a huge week for the SEC. Because early on in the season, it was, the SEC's down. They're only one, however, what the out-of-conference record was against Power 5 teams. It wasn't great. But I think a lot of the SEC teams early on were inexperienced, didn't have a lot of guys that were experienced. That's the same thing as an experienced dummy. But they fresh places, fresh faces. Wow, do that 2 times. And I think these teams in the SEC have gotten better as the year has gone on. Look at Ole Miss, or not Ole Miss, LSU. LSU was thought to be one of the best SEC teams outside of Georgia. They regressed. Alabama was thought to not be as good. They got better as the season went on. So this is a big weekend because you got Florida State, Kentucky, Louisville, South Carolina, Clemson, Georgia Tech. I'm trying to think of that's it for like.
You got Auburn, Alabama. Did you mention Auburn, Alabama?
Well, Auburn, Alabama, but I mean,
you don't think there's any way? And I think Hugh Freeze could. I think, and especially after getting their asses kicked by New Mexico, they were embarrassed. Where are they playing this game?
Tuscaloosa. They're playing in Jordan Hare.
I mean, I believe Alabama is. I'm going to contradict myself. I believe they're the second best team, but Auburn come ready to play.
Yeah, that's the thing where I was hesitant. I don't know if that would look good or not because I don't think. Obviously, I think Alabama's going to win the game. I wouldn't be shocked at all that Alabama is given kind of a scare against Auburn. I mean, that's what happened in 2021. That Auburn 2021 team was not good. They were terrible. And they took Alabama to 3 overtimes, a team that played in the national championship, won the SEC. So they lost, though, 33-18. But it's very possible that Auburn could hang in there with Alabama. I don't see them winning, but I can see them hanging in there and giving Alabama fans some heartache. But that's about it.
Well, yeah, I've watched Washington play. I've watched Oregon play, and I believe on a neutral field, Alabama would whip their ass. They're just a different quality of athlete out on the field, man.
Yeah.
I know Penix is great and good and all that. I'm not taking anything away, but come play somebody that can play some defense, and Alabama can play some defense. Best Alabama defense has looked since Kirby Smart left.
Yeah, for sure. Look, anyone that comes out of the Pac-12, I think what's going to end up happening if the water holds, I think what's going to end up happening is going to be Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, and Florida State. If the chalk held, right, all for the next 2 weeks.
I'd like to see Lanning get in there.
Well, here's the thing, though, man. Who the hell has Oregon played? They haven't played anybody.
Who do any of those guys play out?
Well, really? That's the point too. But dude, they're gonna get their ass kicked. They're gonna get their ass kicked, and that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Like Washington, watching them against Oregon State last night because I've watched Washington. Huh?
You said last night. You mean last weekend?
Last weekend. But I watched Oregon. I've watched Washington a few times this year. It's been a couple times I've stayed up late enough to watch. And it was really obvious against Oregon State, and coming straight out of the Georgia-Tennessee game, going into that game, looking at the lines of scrimmage was
huge
difference. I mean, there's no way they could compete with us. So, I don't know. It's a playoff, and they want national brands. They want it to each corner of the country so everyone can watch it. Whatever, who cares? I just hope that Georgia gets in and we don't have to worry about any of this shit.
So. Well, if they went out, there shouldn't be a conversation. But yeah, I agree with you. And it's a different topic for a different day. But who assigns these committee members? Like, we don't know anything about who these people are. What are their credentials? What are they using for criteria? We went from what was it, the BCS, what was so imperfect, right? And then now we've got this, and I'm not 100% sure it's any better. But
I never really understood why we didn't have the BCS, but just make it a 14 playoff with a committee that could overrule some of the things that the computer said. Because the BCS, a lot of times,
the BCS be in that position to be the committee that overrules the computer, though. You know what I mean? That now,
yeah. Well, you wouldn't know it, but the BCS probably, if going back now, Georgia wouldn't have won that national championship of 21 because of that. Well, if you had a 14 playoff, maybe, but I didn't ever mind the BCS. I just wanted it to be expanded to about 4. I can't remember if I want. I think it was 8, and I think that's the number that should be at. 12 is way too much because fucking Ole Miss would be in the playoffs right now.
Missouri would be in playoffs, and I'm going to tell you,
it'd be dangerous.
They would be dangerous.
They would be dangerous. They would rattle off some wins, but dude, Ole Miss and Penn State, wow, yeah,
whatever's going on.
The bottom of the top 10 is just not that good. So whatever. But all right. Well, let's get into Tech. I don't even know. I don't know. I hate to be this way, but Tech is just they have gotten a lot better. They're celebrating that they got to a bowl game. Congratulations. I guess enjoy the Little Caesars Bowl in Detroit. I don't know. I mean, whatever. I always forget how much I hate Tech until we get to this week. Everything about them is little brother energy. Everything is how they're so different than us, how they hate us, how we're the worst, we're the cesspool of the South, we're all idiots and rednecks, and our diplomas don't mean anything. In the meantime, while all of that's being said, Georgia has won 2 national championships. Academically, that's what I was about to point. Academically, we're about to pass them, which
depending on the degree, right? I don't think we're going to be passing them in engineering. I mean, engineering school at Georgia is fairly new. That's what they're known for, right?
Just go look at the rankings. That's all I'm saying.
All right. I haven't looked.
That has to really bother them. It has to be. And But here's the thing: I don't think Georgia Tech cares anymore.
Well,
But
their actions say they don't. Not
well,
much.
no, for sure. No, and honestly, at some point, I we as a person that cares a lot about the history of college football and the tradition of it, Tech needs to get the shit together because they're one day this game's never going to be played, and to me that's going to be a shame because you know, I have some good memories about this game, and I like playing Tech. It's always nice. So I don't want them to become like a Georgia State or Georgia Southern, and they're
Shit, Georgia State and Georgia Southern better programs than they are.
I know, but that it's starting to become that way, and there's no reason to. So they're trending upward. I'm pulling for you to get over that hump, though you never will. But Brent Key's a good coach. I think Kirby has a lot of respect for him.
I think he likes him.
Yeah, which kind of bums me out. I don't really like that. I kind of want the coaches to hate each other for Georgia and Georgia Tech. But evidently they don't. So I don't. So whenever we go into this, and I know the line's 24.5 right now, it probably went up. Has it gone up? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it's still 24.5 or 24.
And it might go up on late money. I wouldn't touch it because I don't think Kirby's going to run up the score on these guys.
Would agree.
Um,
And I don't think Kirby's going to be playing some of the guys that could probably play.
Yeah, that's what I was about to bring up too. Yeah. So Ladd and Tate. Tate is from inside sources within the building. I talked to some of the inside sources today. Said inside source, I could play if I wanted to, but I don't know if they're going to let me play, quote unquote. But I'm trying to play because I want to, quote.
Glad to hear that because that didn't look good, right? We both thought
it was just a bone bruise.
Yeah,
it was a bone bruise.
I didn't look like a bone bruise to me.
No, it did not. I thought it was like internal. Well,
I
texted the source and asked if it was a ligament damage. If there was more to that, off the record, I wasn't going to say anything. If it was, he said no. That source did. Don't know who the source was. So I don't think Ladd's going to play. I don't think Tate's going to play. Julian Humphrey probably not going to play. He might play just to get reps in, but I don't think he's going to play.
Probably ain't going to play.
Raw definitely not going to play. So we're going in there, but so don't be shocked if that happens. But more importantly, and I wanted to tell you this before we even go any further, because I don't really like to get into the numbers too much, and I rather watch what Tech. And we've watched a lot of Tech this year. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. They're watchable. They're not running a gimmicky offense, and they actually have athletes that can execute inconsistently, but they can execute.
Yeah, for sure. So I started lately. I'm getting into the numbers and trusting numbers, which is kind of scary because I'm not that guy. But this is the worst thing I've ever seen. So Tech offensively, and total offense is 30th. Pretty good, right? I mean, that's not terrible, right?
Right.
Defensively, they're 116th in total defense. Do you know how many FBS teams there are? And
what are they, 128 or 130?
130. So, on third down conversions on offense, they're 25th. Pretty good. Georgia Tech's defense on third down conversions is 99th. They're 51st in passing yards allowed on defense with 216 yards per game. So here's
primarily ACC schools. If Carson Beck's feeling it, that might get ugly.
Well, here's what I'm about to tell you. This is huge. Carson Beck is not going to throw for 200 yards Saturday. He's just not. Georgia Tech's rushing defense is 128th in the country.
Wow.
Second to last. They've given up 224 yards per game.
Well, Edwards and Milton and Cash, yeah, they all better get ready for the ice bath because Kirby's going to take the friggin' air out of the ball, boy.
Yeah, and Georgia Tech is also 40th in penalties. It is going once I
Georgia had on penalties. They have to be in the top.
We're in the top 10.
Yeah,
I have to go back and look.
One thing I will say about that Tennessee game, I think there was 5 total penalties.
Yeah,
3 on Tennessee, 2 on us. It was a clean game, or they didn't call it.
They missed a ton of calls, and I know Tennessee fans can bitch. Why are we going back on this? Damn it! But
SEC officials are just officials. I mean,
yeah, they suck, man.
Really bad.
I mean, there were multiple face masks that Tennessee just.
They were tackling our guys too.
Yes, and then they want to bitch about pass interference. What the fuck are you guys talking about? Anyway, hillbillies. I think Tennessee fans need to take a class in football 101. Like they need it really. Yeah. So anyway, Tech is Kirby's. We might as well run the triple option in honor of Paul Johnson. This thing is going to be a bloodbath. There's no way in the world that we are not going we're going to run the ball 40 times.
I'm all for it, man. And put in our second string offensive line too, and just let them get some work. I want as many people to play as possible.
Yeah, I want out. Once the second quarter's up and we have a good lead, I'm completely okay with just waving the white flag and moving on so we can get ready for Bama. But also there's some familiar faces. Buster Faulkner, who used to be what was his specific title?
Just an offensive analyst.
Offensive analyst, but also Stetson Bennett whisperer.
Right.
Then you have Don Blaylock, which I don't. This whole thing with NIL and the transfer portal, I really hate that Don Blaylock's playing for Tech.
Me too.
It really bothers me because he was a good ball player for us, and I like him a lot.
I get it from his perspective.
Yeah, well, he can go fuck himself. And then Brett Seether, the tight end, he was third string, whatever he was. I know Goody was ahead of him, but he's on there. He's their tight end. He only has 4 catches. 3 of them are
touchdowns, right?
Yeah. How weird is that? That's an odd stat. So while Tech fans and Tech students and alumni and everyone over there says they're so different than Georgia, in order to get bowl eligible, they have to have Georgia scratch.
Shearer is their defensive coordinator.
That's right. Kevin Shearer. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Kevin Shearer. So they've had to have scraps to get bowl eligible from Georgia. So congratulations. I guess we're so terrible.
Well, here I've got a few more years on you to go back to the Tech program. The thing that gets me that Georgia's done a much better, they can say whatever they want to, but Georgia's done a much better job of expanding their fan base. Like whenever I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, you had many more native Georgians that were actually fans of Tech. You know what I mean? Like people from Georgia, from the Atlanta metro area specifically. It was a pretty, it was probably split 60-40, maybe even 50-50 between Georgia and Georgia Tech fans.
Yeah.
In the area, I grew up in North Fulton County. There's a lot of Tech fans. Now, most of their fan base are their alumni, and most of the alumni have no roots outside of going to college in Atlanta to the state of Georgia, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, whenever I was out of college or in college, I worked for a contractor and just as a summertime job, and we were redoing the dorms down in Tech. And the stuff that those Tech students used to write on the bathroom stalls about Georgia, like the University of Georgia diploma, and have an arrow pointed down at the toilet paper wrapper.
Yeah.
they have a real serious problem with like that, like you said, the big brother mentality. They hate us and they want to make fun of us. But look, I agree with you. They got to do better. There's no excuse for a supposedly big time college program in the state of Georgia not being able to get better athletes. And that's total bullshit, by the way, what they say, well, we can't recruit because of academics. Bullshit.
Yes.
That's the truth.
I've never understood that argument. Stanford was a really good program. I mean, they made some bad hires recently, but Stanford was a good program in the 2000s. Duke basketball, I mean, they have to have academic standards for Duke basketball. Good God.
Right.
So at North Carolina, same with that. That's the biggest crock of shit ever. You're in the city of Atlanta. You should do a better job at doing that, and we own you.
And I think Britt Keys gets that because he played there. He's an alumni. I think he knows. I mean, I think he understands. You got to have the players, and I think he's doing some things that's going to hopefully make Tech competitive. But I agree with you. I think they're just going to be overmatched, and I believe Georgia, unlike some of the teams, and I love Mark Richt, and I'm not bagging on him or whatever, but that would be one of the problems with Georgia teams of the past, where they would take their eyes off the ball and lose to teams that they had no business losing.
Well, they never lost to Tech.
No, Mark. That's the reason a lot of people call it Mark Richt Field, and I think they're right. But I'm just saying, the likelihood of Georgia sleepwalking through this when there's so much on the line.
Well, especially at 7:30 at night.
Under Kirby Smart, I put the likelihood really low. And if Georgia comes to play, I think I don't know if it's going to be 24 points, but I would see 14 to 17 points pretty easily.
Yeah, well, I got two things, then we'll wrap up, and then we'll make our predictions. First thing, this rivalry starting to fade, and it's kind of worrisome. I know I touched on it briefly, but it's starting to fade because I remember the first real memory of Georgia and Georgia Tech playing was Reggie Ball. In 2000.
Get him back on scholarship at Tech again.
I wish. But that was such a intense, that time period from like 04 all the way to like 08 was really an intense rivalry. And then 2009, whenever we beat them with Washawn Ely and Caleb King, we just ran it down their throats. That was kind of the end of this whole thing because Tech was ranked number 7. They were going to the ACC title. Georgia sucked that year. We just lost to Kentucky. We had Joe Cox as a quarterback. It was not a very good year for Georgia. Bad year. And then we went down to Tech, and I still remember where I was at, and I still remember what was said on the TV. It was because it was on the local news came on before the game. This is a long time ago, obviously, and I forgot who said it, but it was someone on WSB said, "Well, Georgia probably won't win this one, but we're expecting a good game." Everyone really thought Tech was going to beat Georgia, and they already assumed that Georgia was going to lose. Now, I remember I was 10 years old. That really pissed me off. And Georgia went in there and kicked their ass in front of everybody. And that was probably the most Tech fans at a Georgia Tech game since that point. So that's, by the way, do you remember where we were at before that game?
No, all the year, dude. When you get to be as old as I am, all the years.
We were at Flatlands. It was a party.
Flatlands. What is Flatlands?
The Cajun restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were over there. It was for like.
Oh, it was Yilmaz's party.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where we were before that game.
Okay.
Shout out Umis, I guess. But
yeah.
But also here's the other thing too. Your dad, my grandfather, that was his biggest game. I mean, a
lot of older people.
I know, but he hated Tech, and if Georgia lost to Tech, that was just season didn't matter. It was canceled after that. No matter what. And it really bothered him when Georgia lost to Tech, and he really could not stand Tech. I mean, that's one of the core things I remember. So that's why I care about this rivalry, because of that, because I know how much he cared about it. And Tommy, your uncle, my great uncle, he cared about this game like more than any other games. Like he would watch pro NBA basketball over a Georgia game, but the Georgia Tech game, that was appointment viewing. So that's the reason why I care about this. And it's really sad that it's become this way, but it is what it is.
Well, I will go back even further. I've never, unlike them, right? It's a different generation. I hate Florida worse than I hate anybody.
For sure.
I went to school at Georgia in the 90s, and those were not good years. And Steve Spurrier owned us, and I hate Florida. But I will tell you, it was much more competitive. I'm going to give a little bit of history here, but we had a quarterback that played for my high school that went on to play at Tech named John Dewberry. He was recruited originally by Georgia, went to Georgia. Georgia wanted to turn him into a defensive back under Dooley. He transferred and went to Tech. Some bitch beat us 2 years in a row, and that's the reason I hate Tech. Is because, I mean, really, honestly, I hated seeing him, number one, play for Tech and then beat us 2 years in a row. Now, he's a multimillionaire, John Dewberry, and does something with construction, so good for him. But that I always hated Tech for that reason, and it was a much more competitive game. But it's different than, the older generation is going to tell you the Tech's the most important one, and it is important. But to me, and when Tech got out of the Southeastern Conference, that's probably honestly was the slow decline of their program ever since then, right? So
yeah, Bobby Dodd said that was the biggest mistake he ever made.
Who?
Bobby Dodd. He said it was the biggest mistake he ever made.
All over a fight with Alabama about scholarships or something, right?
Yeah. Well, and then I think the year after the SEC was like, Alabama, you can't just sign unlimited players anymore.
Do you remember? Is it been in your lifetime when Tech would play Alabama?
No.
I remember Tech playing Alabama fairly early on in my life. I mean, I wasn't every year type of thing, but that was a big game, man.
Yeah, it was a big rivalry, or was. But Auburn and Georgia Tech have played more recently, and that's a big rivalry.
Really, I didn't know that.
This will be an off-air conversation maybe later on, but yeah, that's a huge that game. Tech's been playing Auburn as long as Georgia's been playing Auburn,
but not every year. Not anymore.
Well, they played all the way. I forgot what year it was, but it was up to like the 2000s that they played every year.
Really?
Yeah, they have a whole tradition where they wear pajamas. Anyway,
I remember that about. Yeah, I remember the pajama thing.
Yeah, for Auburn, they would wear pajamas. Yeah. It was the whole thing because they greased up the railroad tracks, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is a long – I could go on and on. Here's another thing before we get into score predictions. If you think that Georgia's going to just blow the doors off of Tech, and they should, but don't be shocked if it's a lot like the Mississippi State game last year. Kirby does this in every game that we have a huge advantage over. He knows he can manipulate the game to simulate things that we're not good at. He's done that time and time again. Georgia's going to play a base defense. We're not going to do anything fancy. We're not going to blitz. And then offensively, we're going to do things that we haven't done all year. So don't start panicking because we only have 200 yards of offense in the third quarter. Don't get panicky because we're only winning by 10 or 14 in the third quarter. It's just this type of game is the one where Kirby goes, okay, we're going to play you left-handed with we're going to tie our hand behind our back and we're still going to beat you because we're better, but we're going to do we're going to work on some things that we haven't been good at all season. And we're going to see what works in a live game situation. It happens every time. So you better just prepare yourself. I'm already preparing myself as well because it's frustrating. It's frustrating to me whenever I watch it. And you can tell the players know it by their body language. So it's hard for me to watch, but it is what it is.
Well, I hope you're wrong, but you very well could be right. I do think Georgia's going to take the air out of the ball, and I think we're going to see a lot of faces that, which I'm proud of, or glad. I think we're going to see a lot of faces that we wouldn't normally, or that we haven't seen, or more of people that we've only seen flashes of.
Yeah,
get to be bigger parts of this game. I do agree with that.
yeah. All right, well, let's get into score predictions. The college football nerds model has Georgia 41.2 and Tech is 19.4. So 18 to 40 would be the final score if the computer model was right. Let's go to last week's picks here. You said for last week against Tennessee, you said 40 to 24. I said 42-17. I was definitely closest. So
All right. Well,
me.
Make it take it, buddy. You make a pick first on the Tech then.
Well, if we're gonna go with if we're going with who's the closest, then I guess I'll have to change my pick. I don't see Georgia scoring 40 points. Do you? You do?
I wrote a score down, and my handwriting's messy, and I've written it on some other shit. But I wrote it down about 10 minutes ago. Yes, I do.
I don't. So last year's score was 37 to 14. I think that's probably going to be this year's score. I think it's going to be around 38. You know what? Fuck it. Give me Georgia 40. I really don't like that. Give me Georgia 40. Tech 14. I don't think they can score any more than that. Bless their hearts.
Well, I really did, and I can show the paper if you don't believe me, but I wrote 40 40 Georgia 10. I just don't think that I believe even if we don't have our starters in there, we're going to be able to run the ball. And even with, it sounds arrogant. And if this come back and bites me in the ass, I'm going to hate myself. But I believe even with our second and third string guys in there, I believe we're going to be able to put up 40 points on Tech. And I don't believe they're going to be able to function at a high enough level to get much over 10 points. You may be right. They may get 2 touchdowns. But 40 to 10 is what I had written down.
Yeah, I just Tech win. Even if it was a one-score game, I don't think Tech's going to win this game. It's just I don't know. There's not
money on it and take Georgia and give up the 24 points. Absolutely not.
No, I would. That's the thing. I would. That 24.5 is a huge spread, and if we're up that big and we're putting in backups and Kirby's just doing death march, there's a chance that they backdoor cover and you lose your ass. So I wouldn't do that if I was a betting man. All right. Well, check out Don the Dog. We're gonna have game predictions, some other useless blogs because I gotta get to 50 blogs this month and we're way behind. So enjoy this brain of content that's just going to be spilling out all over the web pages. For your shipping needs, go to Unishippers Atlanta. Ask for, I don't know, pick a name. Doesn't matter.
Holland.
Who?
Holland.
Yeah, ask for Holland. And they'll get you set, I guess. All right. Anything else before we go?
Well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and we'll see how close we are after the game.
Yeah, and for the people that have stayed this long, go to the Twitter, go to the Instagram, follow Terminus_sports. We appreciate It's shocking that people actually watch this more than an actual official Georgia podcast with its own podcasting network. More people watch this than over on that. So thank you. We appreciate it, and subscribe too if you've stayed this long. Please, God, please subscribe. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. See ya.
See ya.